Let's call our meeting to order and rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good morning, everyone. Everybody's quiet in here. Do you have a good holiday?
Wonderful.
That's awesome. It was kind of a nice long weekend, wasn't it? So first up, let's approve our council minutes from our June 7th meeting.
Move for approval. Second.
Motion and second. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? There are none. Pass these down. All right, first up this morning in our new business, we have Matthew Kane and about a contract with Ritter Strategic Services.
Yes, thank you. Good morning. Coming to you this morning to ask for funding for a consultation project that is in regards to looking at and studying, evaluating what might be needed to upgrade and or replace some of the aging radio infrastructure in the county. Not just for our agency, but it would be looking at all law enforcement from Richmond Police Department to the Greens Fork Marshal's Office, all the volunteer fire departments throughout the county, Richmond Fire, pretty much every public safety entity. We were fortunate enough to be placed on the list of priorities for some of the HELP money and ARPA funds for radio infrastructure upgrade. What we don't know is what we don't know. And so in order to best utilize those resources and funds, I'm a big stickler that I want to make sure that we don't upgrade to something that we really don't need, but yet has good quality and functions like we want it to. We need to be able to do a study and look at exactly what kind of coverage we currently have, what kind of connections to some of these remote tower sites that we have that are using old GTE copper phone lines in some cases that Frontier is struggling to maintain, and look at what it's going to take to replace and or upgrade some of those things. The timeline, as I understand it, for some of those HELP dollars is what has kind of fast forwarded this project just a little bit. Is my understanding those funds have to be earmarked by the end of 2024, I believe, with the project being completed 2026. The study itself is going to take some time. I had originally put in a budget request for next year for this money and these funds. However, we kind of need to get started on this project a little sooner than we'd originally anticipated due to some of these timelines that we kind of just found out about. Therefore, went to commissioners last week, presented the contract to them with Ritter Strategic Services for the amount of $81,800. And it was passed successfully last week, contingent upon council being able to find funding for said fee. And that is why.
Thank you. Yeah, those not only have to be earmarked, you have to be under contract before the end of 2024. So,
if I might add briefly.
you may add briefly.
Thank you.
Briefly.
So this is currently in the draft HELP plan that we've submitted to Okra as part of the $500,000 of Wayne County edit that we committed to implementation of the plan. So those are local, non-federal dollars, and it seemed to make sense that we can use those whenever we want to. There's some limitations on the other HELP commitments that would not allow us to start immediately. So that's our recommendation, is that we take $81,800 out of that $500,000 that has already been appropriated. But we wanted to come back to you all just to sound you out and make that recommendation. It's obviously up to you where the money actually comes from. We support this fully. It's been at least 12 or 15 years that this has been a point of conversation, maybe longer than that. So it's really something that we haven't been able to identify funding, and this would allow us to do that.
Thank you. That was quite brief. Does anybody have any questions for Matthew or Jeff or anybody?
So Matthew, will this study involve all levels of the radios down to handhelds and everything?
Correct, yes. Not just mobile coverage, it'll be outdoor and indoor, mobiles, portables, yes, the whole gamut. VHF, 800, looking at whether VHF is the way to go and continue going for the volunteer fire departments, or whether we need to explore other options to the dual band system, either bringing them to 800 or coming up with some sort of merge, and then what those costs would look like.
And do we still have some areas in the county that lack adequate coverage?
Correct, and it depends on whether we're talking 800 or VHF. The volunteer fire departments is probably the system that struggles the most, just simply because of geography, where the towers are located and the type of system that it is, the simplex system. 800 megahertz is much better, but it too has some limitations when we get in the far northeast corner of the county, up around Whitewater, Bethel, and then also in the southwest corner. Those are the ones we hear about anyhow, let me put it that way. The southwest corner is kind of in the middle of several towers. There's a tower in Connorsville, there's one in Knightstown, and then the one in Dalton, and it's just kind of right in the middle of all of them. So.
Some of these issues we dealt with in the 80s and 90s, and it's always been a problem.
We're fortunate to have this money at this point in time to be able to go ahead and do these kind of things that really need done. So I will entertain a motion to approve this $81,800 for the contract with
I'd like to make that motion because I've experienced a lot of things Matthew's talked about as far as radio communications and stuff. So I'd like to make that motion.
Jeff, I have a comment.
Okay,
if I
I'll
may,
take a
before your
comment from
second.
Barry.
Ritter Strategic Services, I'm the co-founder of Public Safety Consulting Company that does business in many counties in Indiana and across the United States. I've been under contract with Wayne County since 2021 as the public safety consultant for 911 services. The contract was signed before I was elected to office to council. Ron has prepared the appropriate conflict of interest disclosure statement that'll be signed and be on file, and therefore I'll recuse myself from any action on this.
Okay.
Just to clarify that point, it's my understanding from the guidelines that have been issued with the help dollars and all that there's an absolute prohibition on anyone having a conflict that would result in, as Mr. Ritter has disclosed, if you're using those dollars. So obviously this study will have to be funded by dollars other than
Yeah, we can take this out of the lost revenue part that we claimed out of our ARPA funds so that there's no conflict with the state board.
Edit is the recommendation.
Is that the recommendation?
From the $500,000 that we appropriated to
Yeah.
the help
Oh,
program.
out of the edit part. Okay, that's fine. All right, so we
Second.
have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? There are none, and we have one abstention. All right. Thank you, Matthew. Next up, we'll go to Mark Holscher.
I'd like to talk to you about how you want to do your budget process. what you are looking for from the auditor's office. And then I have a couple of questions that I'd like to throw out at you because they're going to take some thought prior to the hearing, and one of which is my request for an additional employee. You have a copy of the job description that I have handed out. All the other stuff in that packet are offices that have changes and requests for stuff and verified information so you can see their requests for their budgets. And I wanted to get those to you prior to the budget hearing. A lot of the work that you're going to see on the budget hearing has to be done before that day. And I have some questions here, but if you will enlighten me on how this process has been done in the past, and then we can have some discussion on different things that I need in my office.
We usually have a physical copy of the budget that has like the last 3 years, and then the changes for the 24 budget, proposed changes. We like to have that. I mean, we usually have that in paper form. That way we can take those home and look at them. We usually have a book with, there's binders somewhere that has all the department labels in them.
But you don't want to wait till the day of the hearing to get that information.
It'd be nice to have it as soon as we can, but we definitely need them by that day.
But along with that, electronic copy as well.
Yeah.
Some of us want it in our computer.
Yeah, an electronic copy of the same thing, so that some like to have the paper. And as we make changes that day, even though they get made on the computer, we can also write them in our book if we need to, so we've got that to reference.
Okay.
So these things in this packet here are
all the changes.
the offices that requested a change from the 2023 budget.
Correct.
So you need to put together a schedule of when these folks need to come in. And I tried to find a copy of last year's schedule that we had, and whatever reason, couldn't find it.
Do you allow just for those offices that want changes?
Yeah.
No, if anyone else wants to speak with us, they can, but
okay.
We definitely want scheduled.
The people who have changes need to come and talk to us on the 19th during the day.
Okay.
Which at the time you're notifying and putting out a schedule, need to notify that any other department that wants to discuss something in their budget are welcome to be on the schedule.
We can help you with that schedule if you would like. But
okay.
Then, as we go through this budget, you'll make changes on the electronic copy of what changes we make. You'll make it in the computer, that way it's permanent. And we go back, we may change that again, but it's in the computer.
And as we're doing that, it can be on these screens here where we can all see that at the time that's being done on a real-time basis.
and then also we'll have a pile of one-time money that we will be trying to keep track of what we're saying. This could be spent out of one-time money, so that we have a running total of that every time we meet. We can see what, because you know that might change too. It's fluid.
Absolutely.
Okay, go ahead.
I was just going to say, in reference to your statement of talking about your requested positions, that's on the agenda for the Personnel Committee, which follows.
That's right.
And one other thing, do you have like an idea yet of what our new money's going to be?
No.
We don't. We usually have an idea by the time we start budget, a guesstimate of what they tell you it's going to be, and then we don't find out for sure what it is for a few months, but we'll need to know what the new money's going to be.
In the council's philosophy of how this works, do you take the available money and then look at appropriations to fit that amount of money? Or do you ignore with the money, which would be what I would do as auditor, that's coming in until you see what you actually have in budgets that you need.
We always need the new money.
Well-
but we'll, we base our raise, usually our employee raise, on how much new money we're getting and see what that costs us out of that, first of all. And then we go from there, because there could be some left over, there could be none left over.
I think that we need, as we're going through it, to have an idea of what the available funds are or will be, so that we don't keep some things in there that we know can't be funded. If we know we can't do it, then we don't need to be carrying those through to the end.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
I
and since
would
we're
think-
halfway through the year too, we should get an approximate cash balance that we're gonna have at the end of the year. We'd like to know that amount.
Financial statement.
So columns of actual spent for the last 3 years, as well as one for the
First
first
6 months.
6 months of this year,
I understand.
can
Yeah.
be very helpful in questioning the need of funds. If somebody continually has asked for more or asked for more than what was spent, we need to discuss that with them, that, you know, what's the reason for that?
My request for an additional person in my office, depending on what you do, will affect the budget that I have. So, in addition to that, we're currently going through the budgets and seeing how much is spent first half of the year to determine if that appropriation is too high, too low, and needs to be changed within individual budgets. I have some questions on it that I think I need some information about before I can tell you what money is available. For example, in the clerk's office, they have an appropriation that is just too high for what they've spent. And so we're looking at that as something that needs to be reduced before, and I've already talked to the clerk, an area that you can, not now, but that I can suggest you reduce that appropriation as we're going in, which would change how much money is available.
And we understand that's gonna be an approximate amount,
I understand.
yeah.
And those are the kind of things that at the 19th need to be discussed with that office holder when they're in here.
Right.
That's true.
But what I'm trying to do is, before the 19th, put together an idea of what you're gonna need. The, in the council's budget, there's an appropriation for health insurance that we paid almost $4 million out of each year. And it's kind of it's not my job to whether what you do with that health insurance policy, but it is my job to see if that appropriation is sufficient to carry you through the end of the year or even to the next year. And I'm asking for your help in this because I need some information from you and commissioners. We're paying them roughly $335,000 a month. Doesn't vary. I can't determine with Dunn if they have sufficient money or not sufficient money. That appropriation is roughly $4 million, and I'm trying to figure out if that appropriation is high enough, low enough, you know, is sufficient. That's a large chunk of your budget. So if I start asking questions, I'd appreciate your help in determining, and commissioners determining if that, where that appropriation sits. I assume, and I shouldn't do that with a budget, that there is sufficient money that Dunn is holding of our money. Could we write them a check, both employee money and county money, that it appears to me that there is more than enough money held by Dunn to cover the bills. If there isn't, then you have a rainy day fund that you can pay an excessive amount of money to them. In trying to find out if Dunn, after receiving the roughly $335 a month, has sufficient money of ours and employees, then that appropriation of $4 million can be reduced. I have a proposal that I will make to council that will say that deal with long-term, that's not the proper, I can't think of the proper term for it right now, pay for employees that have been here at 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, whatever the council wants to do. But there is a problem with our pay system that we have now. For example, I bring a lady into my office to do a job. The gal sitting right next to her has been doing roughly the same job for 2 or 3 years and has to train her. And then when somebody comes in, I got to pay them the same amount that the long-term person has made or makes. And I'm proposing that you look at
You're looking at a longevity pay.
yeah, so that trying to get away from that problem within my in my budget. But I'm not the only one. I've talked to several office holders, and we all have the same problem based on the way the pay is structured. And so I'm going to make a proposal to you, but I would like to, I'm telling you now, because this is all going to take time from you, and I'm putting together figures now on what that would cost based on years of longevity or work. And I know that when the time comes with your budget hearings, that I don't know how you would accept my proposal, but it would be part of your budget that I would assume would be for '24. And I'm coming up with figures on that now. And I have different methods of paying for that, because you're going to ask me where you're going to get the money. That's why I'm going through and looking at the various appropriations in each budget, that if I had to, I could recommend paying part of that. For example, if the appropriation for Dunn is too high, then I know that part of that paying or expense, all I'm trying to do is go through the budgets, find ways that we can pay for things if you do it, and that the taxpayers don't get a heavy hit on it. In talking to a couple council members, I'm concerned about the philosophy that you want to know how much money is available. My opinion is that's fine, and we can look at that, but that's one way of running the budget hearings that you have. Another way of running the budget hearings that you have is determining whether the charge that's made against the taxpayers out of the various budgets is necessary. And
that's something we do every year. We go line by line through every budget, and we make recommendations and make decisions based on what we see. That's why we want to see those prior years. we don't want to know the budget, the money, so we can just spend it all. We just want to keep our cash balance at a certain amount when all is said and done. with
Well, I will
budget.
tell you the cash balance that I will give you is not accurate.
It's close.
It's maybe not within a 300, 400, 500,000.
Yeah, that's close.
May not be accurate. Right now, and you're gonna get grants, and that's why I need this person. All the grants in the county, and I have a list of which ones need to go to commissioners and which ones go to council for appropriations. Those grants that are currently in the red, they are the responsibility of county general fund if we can't get them straightened out, which in effect reduces the amount of money that I think you're going to have. And that's a problem that's been there for a while, and really need to get this grant money straightened out so that there's not a liability to the county for shortfalls. And I understand I'm throwing a lot at you right now, but this is the process my office is going through to determine what I can present to you as expenditures and money. And because of that, and I have a request into you for additional help, I would like to invite council to come into my office, take a tour with me, talk to my employees and me as why I need this person. And I think you need to see also what we do in that office. And all of this ties into just everything that I need to get done in there. So if it would be possible for council members to come through there, I think that would be an appropriate thing for council members to do. And I'd like to show you my office. I would like to be able to show you why I need different things, and it might be helpful to you to decide on my budget, which is not going to look anything like the budget was given to me when I came into office. That's a lot of information for me, and it all these are all things that tie together in my office for the budgets. But I would like to schedule a walkthrough with you people and let you see what we do. Last week I gave the commissioners, we give them a docket of claims that they look at, but they don't see the whole claim. And we went through stacks of claims that they get in a little docket. And it gives the commissioners an opportunity to see what we do in there with the claims, which is a small part of what our office does. But if I would like to, if you can, I would like for you to come through my office and look at it and see what we do. Sometimes council and commissioners sit back and have their jobs to do, but it's difficult because you don't see what happens in that office. So if that would be possible, I'd like to have you do that and set up a time or something where you would come in and we'd show you what we do. And you talk to my employees and let them tell you. But it's, all of this ties together differently than what you're going to do on the 19th. But it is something that, in order to give you the information that I think you want, then I need feedback from you as to how we're going to do this. And part of that's going to be, I want to show you the structure of my office, which we've been changing the structure on, and it's just something I think needs to be done. But if you would tell me yes or no now, that'd be fine. Then I can move on with how I want to do things in my office.
Yes or no to what? Coming in and
Coming
seeing
in and
things?
looking
Yeah,
at
I mean,
it.
you'll have to set up a time and let us know
If
when you're gonna be there.
Go ahead.
I think he's asking for us to give him possible time if we want to do it. Is that right?
Pardon?
I think you're asking us to give you a time that we want to do that.
Well, you got budget hearings on the 19th. I've got a person here that I need to hire to do these grants. And the grants themselves are a major part of the problem that we're having because we don't know anything about the grants. And so it's just, for me, it ties together in how I make my budget, appropriations that are in the different areas, and trying to determine what appropriations I think are too heavy and which aren't.
Well, all our final decisions won't be made on the 19th, so we still have a couple months here. And I mean, there's no way that we don't even have an approval yet from personnel or anything. You're not gonna have somebody hired and have the grants straightened out in a couple weeks anyway. So, I mean, we can make time, but it'd be a better time when we're all here. It's hard for some of us live out of town, and it's hard to get everybody back here. People have other jobs.
Oh,
so,
I was figuring before one of your meetings or after your meeting, and just take you through there and let you see.
I mean, we can possibly do it after our next morning meeting.
What kind of timeline am I looking at for this, my request for an additional person or two?
We'll have to talk about that in personnel, I suppose.
That's on the agenda.
It's on the agenda in personnel.
Yes.
Okay? So, you know, I mean, we can send an email out. We can temporarily set up after our meeting on the August
What about
2nd.
Well, the last 2 years, on the day that we, like the 19th, we get done prior to what we're scheduled.
That's possible too.
I would think that could be a possible time, that once we get done with our stuff that day. that
We may have extra time during
Yeah,
that day.
because
We'll all be here.
as far as I know, everybody's blocked that day out on their calendar to be here.
That's fine.
So I think that would be a good day to aim
If we
towards that.
can't do it on the 19th, we'll
Yeah.
try to do it after our August 2nd meeting.
Also on the 19th, we got our
Workshop.
workshop, which would probably be some business as well, but again, last year, we did all that earlier in the day, and we're out of here, so I think there could possibly be time that
Yeah,
day.
there'll be a time at some point.
But prior to your meeting on the 19th and prior to the budget adoption and all that, I'm gonna have questions and I need to know who I direct them to about.
I'm your liaison. You can ask me anything you need to know.
Okay, because that is, Dunn just happens to be one that I can't figure out. And there are other appropriations and other budgets that are healthy, I guess if you want to call them that. And
We'll just have to talk about those things. I mean, in the past, we've had to give extra money to Dunn when we're having bad years. And so it equals itself out over time. So we'll just have to talk about that.
In the discussion about Dunn, the commissioners, basically, that's their bailiwick, as to what's done, why, how, come up with the projected funds that are needed, and all that kind of thing. And so a lot of that discussion needs to happen with the commissioners.
Right.
They come forth to us then saying, this is the amount of money that is proposed that we'll need to cover ourselves for the year's medical needs. And being a self-insured institution rather than fully relying on a purchase policy, it's different than some people consider. It's hard to come with an exact number because we've been fortunate the last year or so, we haven't had the claims that we had prior to 2 years ago. When I was on here, I remember a lot of discussion about that fund being in the red and needing not a little bit of money, but we're talking millions of dollars. So we don't want to get in that position again. So you need to spend a considerable amount of time with the commissioners on that one. That we're kind of the tail end of that discussion. We're not the leading edge of that.
well, what brought it up with me, you have a rate that you charge employees for their policy that was set last year
By the commissioners.
by the commissioners. In the last, and I don't remember the date, you added a cost to that on well care or
The telehealth for
Yeah.
part-time.
and
To those employees that weren't covered by the
Yeah.
insurance, I believe.
Yeah.
And that did
So
not
we
come
had
from the gun
appropriated
plan
money from
document, it
something.
can't.
No, it didn't.
You have to understand, these monies are, I think the term most apropos is that they're entrusted. Actually, the same similar fund that exists for Richmond Community Schools actually has a trust agreement and trustees appointed. We effectively do that to the structure of government with the commissioners
Well, I'm
and
not
council.
questioning the method or anything like that. That's not my problem. What I was concerned about is on what you had said as a rate a year ago. You could come in this year and add a cost to that policy that was, it's going to be expensive. My question is, if you had that a year ago and put a cost on it this year, and apparently there is enough money in the, what Dunn is holding of ours, then it just came up as a red flag, is what Dunn receiving too much based on adding cost this year on last year's rates. And I can't tell because I don't know what they have and don't know what the balance would be after you add that cost. So those are, go ahead.
As to the amount of money they have, it's my understanding you get a monthly report on that, just like the commissioners, HR, and so.
Used to.
It's my understanding you still do. If you're not, then you talk to commissioners and to Kim and make sure you're on that list.
Okay. But no, I don't.
Okay. I understand you do, so work that out with them. You should have that, there's no question about
It
it.
should, yeah, it's probably electronic.
I only have one comment. You've mentioned 2 or 3 times about what, in my words, appear to be an overfunded appropriation within departments.
Right.
And having been a department head and understanding how those departments work, I would encourage you to work with the department head to have an understanding of what that appropriation in that line item is for, because it could be a one-time expense under a service level agreement contract that maybe is payable in December. It's a one-time payment. It could be a non-reverting dedicated fund that's restricted. And as you build this longevity, and I appreciate you looking at that, we're not looking at identifying money that actually has another use that's entrusted to the department head to manage.
I am not going to do anything with anybody. I can't. That's up to council.
Agreed.
All I am doing with it is I'm going and I check with each office holder about their budget, and in the process of doing that, before it comes to you. I think there's been the fear that of council, that based on my method of doing this budget, that I'm going to go in and change things within the budget. And then I've had that conversation with a couple of the council members already and the commissioner. And that's not my goal. I can't, and that's up to council. What I'm trying to do is look at the possibility of, if you have to cut someplace, where would you, could you gonna come to me and say, well, where would you cut this? And I'm gonna be able to say, here are some items that could be reduced.
Those are the kind of things we'll ask you that day.
It seems like you're wasting a lot of your time nitpicking these budgets. Well, we will do that at budget hearing. We look at the previous 3 years. If they haven't spent that money, it's still appropriated, we ask, do you really need it? What do you need it for? So we take care of that here. So you're wasting a lot of your time nitpicking these budgets, as far as I'm concerned, Barbara.
I'm going to respond to that quickly. I'm not wasting my time. I got elected to make a change, and that's what I'm gonna do with the, in my process of going through these budgets. And if, it is not a waste of time for the auditor to look at all these budgets as they come into you and be able to make recommendations to you as to the depth of the appropriations that are in that budget. But I know there was some comment from some council members that I was going to change budgets and it's not going to happen that way.
Well, it can. I mean, honestly, I don't know.
I know, but the comments are still there.
I think they were actually comments that someone brought from you, but there's no reason, we don't need to I don't think we need to discuss all this any further. I think you know what, you wanted to know what we expect that day, and we've gone through that, and we'll just move on from there. We'll try to come in your office the day of the 19th, and are you gonna set up the schedule of times for people to come in all day?
If I didn't, who would?
Tony and I?
It's up
But
to you.
no, I
Those
mean-
aren't my calls.
I mean, we would like for you to do that, because you know, all these people who gave you requests, they
Right.
just
You're
need
gonna
a
need more time.
time frame to come in and talk to us, okay? So that'd be awesome. You have the means to communicate with them. And you can, if you can get us that before the 19th, that would be awesome. Just email it, because we don't come in to check our boxes all the time. Very much.
How much time do you allot to each department head?
It depends what all their, I mean, you can kind of see if they have one request, 15 minutes is long enough, but if they, you know, we might need to talk to Matthew for a long time that day. He's got some
Well,
things.
you know, it doesn't, you know, looking at it, doesn't take brain surgery for me
Yeah,
to.
you can figure that
You know,
out.
you got the prosecutor that has a fat fix, then you got the treasurer's office that makes one change, and
Yeah.
that's all something that can, those are.
Okay, we'd appreciate you doing that. Is that all for you then today?
That's enough.
Okay, it's enough.
Till personnel.
Till personnel.
Right.
All right, next up we have Sheriff Rutter with his commissary report, which I think we all received in an email. Did you guys all get that?
Yes, I did.
Yep.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I did bring copies if anybody would like a copy this morning. Otherwise.
Sheriff, I'd like to.
Nope, very good. Thank you for seeing me this morning, and as you had indicated, I sent out an electronic copy of the commissary report for the period of time January 1st, 2023 through June 30th, 2023. This report in summary shows the ending balance on December 31st of 2022 at $266,851.54. Total disbursements over the course of that time of $147,499.59, and a balance as of June 30th, 2023 of $218,668.96. And I would gladly entertain any questions if there are any.
Is there any significant changes in any of these items that you want me to look at them, just past experience?
We did have, excuse me, we did have an influx of cost for equipment that we chose to spend it on. There was also an increase in our training costs this year, but I'm hoping that this amount will stabilize, or the balance will stabilize a bit. The new contract that I have with our inmate communications vendor and some new programs that I'm installing in our jail for our inmates, which will give them better capability of communication and visitation with folks outside. It should also net a little bit more for the commissary account, which will give us some extra funding, potential anyway.
Thank you.
Randy, I noticed the credit card, the credit card would be broken down maybe in classification, like for radio equipment or something like that, where you use a credit card, different classifications. I noticed it's just a dollar figure there.
Are you talking about the Visa?
Yeah, Visa card, yeah.
The
$0.
Visa,
It says $0.
yeah. So,
I don't have a copy of it, but I printed it off, but I didn't bring it in.
oh, here,
Maybe you didn't see the right line.
Yep.
happy to,
I've made some notes on mine.
It's this one.
yes.
It's not that, it's this.
Our record
Okay.
keeping does break that down into each category.
He was seeing the number above.
I was seeing
Oh.
the number above.
Oh, okay.
Probably at 11 o'clock at night, that's maybe the reason why I see that. Okay,
Couldn't get
excuse me,
sleep.
Randy.
Yeah, no problem. Any other questions?
Does anybody have any questions? Thanks for coming
Very
and bringing
good.
that to us.
One last thing about the commissary is I hope to, once the budget hearings progress a little bit further, to bring the council an updated resolution for the commissary. In my recent review of that, there are a lot of items that are on the resolution that are unnecessary currently. There are also some items on there that need to be adjusted based on inflation and other things. So my hope is just to bring that to council at some point in the near future, and obviously I would forward that to Mr. Cross ahead of time for his review.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you all.
Thanks, Sheriff. Do we need a motion to accept this or not? This report?
Just show that it's presented and accepted.
I move we accept the commissary report from the sheriff.
Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? There are none.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, are we doing commissioners report, we doing projects first?
Please.
All right, Mr. Steve Higginbotham,
Good morning.
good to see you today.
Again, you have before you your 2-week report. Not much change since the last one that you looked at. Obviously, the highlighted areas in yellow are the changes. I just will make a couple of comments on a couple of projects. The courthouse exterior, that one seems to be, unlike a lot of other projects, seems to be moving ahead of schedule a little bit. They are actually on the northwest side, and the removing of the old grout, the loose grout, they've actually moved to the east side, and that's the last side that they'll start on, but that seems to be moving a little bit quicker than the project timeline had what it was established at. The courthouse bathrooms, that one looks like it's pretty well on schedule. Not many issues have come up that were unexpected. A couple of plumbing issues where we would route some of the new plumbing, and going through limestone walls is a little bit difficult from time to time, but that should be concluded in a couple of months, which is what their original time schedule is. I can't tell you yet the completion of the sound system in this room. The contractor that is hired for that has had a couple of contacts with IT department, but it was my understanding they were waiting on one piece of electronic equipment. That did arrive last week, so I'm hoping that we'll see some progress in the completion of the sound system in this room. Number 25, the digital scanning. I did talk to the clerk. That's a big project. I think she indicated there was like 75 million pieces of paper that is going to be digitized. she indicated that it's moving along as fast as she can keep up with giving the documents to the company that's doing this. Because she makes a record of what goes off to the company, then when it's digitized and it comes back, then she double checks to make sure that everything was scanned that she sent off. And so it's keeping her staff busy to keep up with the company that's doing that. Hopefully on the website creation for the fairgrounds, as you know, we hired our marketing coordinator a couple of weeks ago, and I hope we can get something to you to show some results of her work in the next couple of weeks. It's that, and the commissioners will be considering some branding information, branding slogans for the fairgrounds, which we want to build into that, and on the social media platform. And then the HVAC at Coleman, it's actually in. We're still running on the temporary HVACs that the contractor had loaned us. They ran into an issue where the new unit hooks into the building's ductwork. That connection there is not the same, and so they're relying on a metal fabricator to make that. It's called a curb adapter, but it's an adapter so that the new unit connects to the ductwork in Coleman. Hopefully that'll be done in a couple of days. The biggest thing to bring to your attention, here we are halfway through the year, and remember the items that you see under projects for 2022 and that project amount, that remaining balance, remember, did not get encumbered. And so based upon the balance that you have in your one-time expenditure appropriation for this year, if all those projects that you've thus far committed to, and that's that number on the far right, if all that came due today, you'd be about $1 million short in that appropriation, which is what we expected, because you know you didn't encumber about $3 million. So and I'll keep that number. You're probably going to have to address that probably around October, November. Okay. Any questions?
So of all those that committed, will all of them be done in this year, or some carry forward?
You know, I didn't think the exterior of the courthouse would be, because the timeline that they had originally given us was March of 2024. You know, it's going to depend on when the weather changes. If they get good weather up into November, they'll still continue to work, but their timeline is to quit the 1st of November. But obviously, so in answer to your question, of all the projects we've got outstanding, that would probably one that we had originally planned to go to 2024 may get done in 23.
I don't think we've ever heard that before. That's
Pardon
awesome.
me?
I don't think we've ever heard that before.
And I say that really.
Yeah, it's true.
Maybe I'll say it a little lower so
Okay.
you can't hear me.
I do have a quick question for Steve. It's on the list, but you didn't talk about it. Where are we with the annex landscaping? Are we?
Well, if you remember that we left it on the list, the dollar amount that was plugged, that had been the estimate for that, there was not a hearty reception for that number, so we left the annex landscaping as a project to consider. We just don't have a number, and I think as we move through this the next couple of months, the commissioners will talk further with that, and we'll come back to you.
I thought we sent something over to the sheriff's personnel to make sure that whatever was in that original, which is probably too much,
Correct.
too big,
And I
you
don't,
know.
I don't think we have that.
But I don't know if we got it back and where we are with all that.
I don't have that for
Okay.
you yet. Yeah.
Okay, thank
There's
you.
a different person that's
Anything
talking
else?
about than when we first heard about it, I think, too.
Right.
Are we even ready to do landscaping? Aren't there still projects going on outside that
Because
would tear
remember,
things up?
we didn't want to mess with the area around where the generator is
Yeah.
going to be.
Yeah,
Because there's some landscaping actually built into that project.
yeah,
But that whole area is going to be disturbed.
yeah.
Yeah.
So we might as well.
Anything
hang
else?
on. Nope, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Plaster.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
So we are making progress on our project list, and we'll be identifying and bringing to you for your consideration as part of the 2024 budget a new list of projects that we want to get completed in 2024. We're still looking at various options there, but we will have a prioritized list to you before the budget is final. Not by the workshop on the 19th, but soon thereafter. And you'll recall that, as Steve said, there's a $1 million shortfall because money was not encumbered. But having said that, that money reverted to the general fund, so it's still available. It's just unappropriated at this point. As for ARPA expenditures, the only expenditures in the past month have been for Beth Field's salary and about $50,000 of that ongoing expense of the clerk's scanning project. So I did not create a spreadsheet for you for today. Our help plans are in the hands of Purdue and Okra to put a draft plan together for us and to look at and approve the CDBG projects that have been recommended for funding. Remember, that's the Community Development Block Grant, the extra $1 million that will come to Wayne County as part of the participation in the HELP program. We hope to have a draft back of the plan sometime this month to share with you, and we can begin those conversations about any modifications and final approval of the plan. At the same time, we're working on HELP. We're also working with Earlham College and IU East as they are applying for funding through a Lilly Grant opportunity. So they are looking at ways in which the community that houses that organization, either Earlham or IU East, can be made better for the community as well as the college or university. So it is a place-making opportunity, and those grants, as I understand it, are due in August or early September, and then they'll find out if they've been awarded their request by the end of the year. So very exciting times. In parallel with that, Ready 2.0 is being discussed and plans are being made. We are working with the same region that we worked with for Ready 1, and we'll have a plan submitted sometime this fall. The schedule and the exact details are not out yet, but there are a lot of opportunities for placemaking programs in Wayne County and in Richmond. So very exciting times in terms of redevelopment of the county and the city of Richmond. I have been working, as you know, with Baker Tilly on a couple of different contracts now. The first you've already approved up to $30,000, and that is for internal controls. So I have discussed this with the auditor, the treasurer, the recorder, and the clerk. That is going to be the starting point for this contract, and Baker Tilly will meet with us and those 4 office holders to discuss their current state of internal controls and what their perceived needs are, and then Baker Tilly will weigh in with a more detailed plan on implementation. So some of the offices already have very detailed internal controls, policies, and procedures in place. Others do not. The county has adopted a policy, but it is not as detailed as it probably should be, and so the county's overall policy will also be a part of that discussion.
When is your timeline for that to be hopefully complete?
It should be done this year, this calendar year.
The plan and the implementation, or just the plan?
Well, we'll see what is required for implementation. Remember, a lot of internal control issues are, do you have separate individuals in place who can review the work that has been done? And so how do you do that? Does that require additional staffing? Hopefully not, but it could in certain circumstances. So we'll see what the plan is, and then we'll deal with implementation if there are in fact changes to our staffing levels that need to be made. In addition to internal controls, I've been talking to Baker Tilly about working with us on our ARPA funds and being that other set of eyes in terms of what are appropriate expenditures of ARPA dollars, and then working with us on reporting, which is a critical piece in all of this. You'll remember we have about $12.8 million of ARPA funds. Of that money, $10 million has been claimed as lost revenue. The other $2.8 million is under the original Treasury guidelines on how those dollars can be spent. That $2.8 million in particular is it's critical that we not only spend the money appropriately, but that we report appropriately, and that we follow all of the Treasury guidelines on expenditures of federal funds. Baker Tilly can help us with all of those things, and so I've asked them to put together a proposal. I should have something by the end of this week that I can share with you. It can be paid for out of our ARPA funds as an administrative cost of spending those dollars appropriately. I kind of look at this as an insurance policy to make sure that we're dotting our I's, crossing the T's, and that there is no chance that a couple years down the road the federal government sends us a letter saying, please repay us X amount because you didn't follow the guidelines appropriately. So that's the intention here. I'll have some numbers and a plan, a proposal, again, hopefully by the end of this week, so that I can share that with you at your next meeting.
I just want to take a minute to commend Jeff for all his work on ARPA, because, I mean, there's not a better person to handle it with all his knowledge of our finances and all those things, and you're
Thank you.
dotting every I and crossing every T, and I really appreciate that, because it's a lot.
Thank you.
And Beth, your right-hand person.
And Beth. So we do have some ideas and on the help that you'll see in writing in that draft plan shortly. But I want you all to realize and remember that there's still additional money that has not been committed, and we need to commit that and start having those conversations. So as soon as we get a number that we think is good for the help part of that equation, which in the draft plan is around $6 million, then there's, again, out of $12.8 million, we've committed about $1.5 million. And so there's what, about $5 million or roughly that's left uncommitted. We need to put together a plan of how we're going to use those funds and get approval, get commitment, and then again, it needs to be committed by the end of 2024 and spent by the end of 2026. So very important that we pay attention to that. Most of you know that we held a sale a couple of weeks ago. We were unable to sell all of the properties at our deed sale sold 2 out of 16. We're working to schedule a new sale, and hopefully we'll have something worked up in the next couple of weeks. In the meantime, we do retain ownership. The county retains ownership of those properties, and so we're working very closely with the city to make sure that we're keeping up on maintenance, and that any complaints that they might be fielding, that we respond to as quickly as we possibly can. So it's not something that we want to last any longer than is absolutely necessary. It was an unforeseen circumstance. We're moving things forward on another sale as quickly as we can. The health department, as you all know, I think is putting together an advisory committee that will be working to develop a plan for how the health department would utilize any additional funding that would come through the state's new initiative on public health. The commissioners have discussed signing on to that agreement, or opting in, as the phrase is. And what we have communicated back to the health department is, before we make that decision, we want to see your plan. We want to see what kind of community input you have gathered, and how you propose to spend those dollars if we do opt in. We have until September 1st to do that. So Christine is working on a plan. She has pretty detailed ideas for herself of how she would like to spend the money, I think. But this process of getting public input is beginning next week or the week after. I think it's the 18th now. That the 18th of July will be the first meeting of that group.
I have a big concern about that, if that money goes away in a couple of years.
And I have talked to our legislators about that. They're both, their feeling on that is that this will continue. It will become a permanent fixture in the state budget. Again, based on all of the details on the health of citizens of Indiana in general, and in our case, in Wayne County in particular, where the state lags the nation and Wayne County lags the state in terms of life expectancy, in terms of quality of life. So it is an issue, and because of that, I think it's highly likely, and both of our legislators, Senator Rotz and Representative Barrett, indicated to me that they think obviously you can't foresee the long-term future, but they feel like it will be something that continues as part of the base budget going forward. So we will see, but again, we wanted to see a plan. Obviously, we'll share that with you all, because it will be your responsibility then to complete the budget, appropriate funds. So we'll keep you posted on that. That is my last entry here in my notes. Be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
The properties from the deed sale that didn't sell, are all those within Richmond?
I think they are, but they are. They are.
And on the contract with Baker Tilly on the internal controls, is that 30,000 figure the top end
That's
of
a
the whole
not to
process,
exceed.
or is there more?
That's a not to exceed number. If we do, as we get into it, if there are any additions, obviously we bring that back to you and discuss them.
Maybe not more from Baker Tilly, but more in the way of employee
Again,
expense.
depending on what the report finds,
Yeah.
and the policy and procedures call for, it's possible that there would be some adjustments necessary.
On the Earlman Lilly grant, Ivy Tech you talked about, is that for brick and mortar facilities for them, or what was that for? I wasn't clear on that.
It has multiple purposes, but the intent, as I understand it, and I'm not intimately involved other than I'm on one of their subcommittees, but the intention is to improve the community that houses the college, and so Earlham is looking at an initiative there, a request, and again, it's not our project, so I'm not at liberty to discuss any of their details, but it would improve, redevelop and redefine the relationship between the college and the community, and the community, I think, for them is Richmond. Not as familiar with IU East, but because they're a regional campus, I'm not sure whether they're thinking more broadly in terms of geography. But IU East, as I understand it, needs to apply first to IU, and then IU would decide whether their application would go forward. But it's a significant opportunity, and we certainly wanted to cooperate and collaborate with them as much as we could, because it would be certainly to the benefit of Wayne County.
Anything else? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Does anyone have anything to report from their various committees? If not, do we have any citizen comments today? There are none. So our next regular meeting is August 2nd at 8 a.m. And our day full of fun is July 19th, 2023, all-day budget hearing starting at 8 a.m. And we will go straight into our budget workshop whenever we see fit at the end of those sessions. Motion to adjourn?
So moved. Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.